Synthaholics.
Welcome to Synthaholics. Thank you so much for downloading this episode. Today we are back at Dune, and we have myself, Aaron O'Brien, and welcome back, Dave Duncan. We've been away for a week.
Yeah, it's been a bit, but we're back. Sorry for all these gaps in Dune.
Oh, well, it's only been the one gap, right?
No, two gaps.
We missed two gaps?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all these gaps.
Because you were on vacation, and then I got married. So, we had back-to-back vacations, so we had missed a week, had a week, missed a week, had a week.
Right. So, congratulations on getting married.
Thank you.
We had a nice time at your wedding, even though it was a small...
bajillion degrees.
A bajillion degrees. It's like getting married on Arrakis.
It was like getting married on Arrakis, ironically enough.
But yeah, so that's why we kind of just kept away from Dune for the week. So, but here we are.
We were living it.
We are living in Dune.
It's been really hot in Buffalo.
It is. It has been very
painfully
warm.
Hot.
We had a heat stroke.
We almost
streak.
had heat stroke.
Yeah, it was in the mid 90s for almost a full week, which is unusual for Buffalo. So.
And on my wedding day, it was like 97.
Yeah, it was very hot.
Really hot.
And humid, so on top of that. So Dave, we are now into the chapter where we meet up with Dr. Kynes. He is the planet ecologist, and he's the Emperor's judge of change. So
he's the judge, huh?
Yeah, he's the judge to make sure. It's not really, spelled out really clearly, but it basically says that here's this guy, and he's supposed to make sure that the changeover from the Harkonnens to the Atreides, everything goes right, and nobody's doing anything too shady. But he's only one guy, so how much could he possibly be able to do?
He's got his Guidos working for him.
Hey, what you guys doing? You got that spice? You got the spice?
You got that? How'd you know how to do that, man? How'd you know how to make that desert style?
It's desert fashion. We started off with a real quick beginning of "In My Father's House" by the Princess Erlan.
In my father's house, I was beaten with a stick, sometimes with a belt, and sometimes with a whip. He was kind of kinky.
He was a jerk. So he said that my father, Pasha Empire, took me by the hand one day, and I sensed in the ways of my mother had taught me that he was disturbed. He led me down the hall of the portraits to ego likeness of the Duke Leto Atreides. I marked a strong resemblance between them, my father and this man in the portrait, both with thin, elegant faces and sharp features dominated by cold eyes. Princess daughter, my father said, I would that you'd have been older when it came for time for this man to choose a woman. My father was 71 at the time and looking no older than the man in the portrait. But I was but 14, and yet I remember deducing in that instant that my father secretly wished the Duke had been his son and disliked the political necessities that made them enemies.
Aww. So he really wants to hang out with the Duke, but it's not fashionable to do so.
Well, his daughter was too young to marry her to him, so well, it's not too late, if he would have held out for a couple more years.
A little bit.
Yeah, because Lady Jessica is just his concubine, so
yeah, I mean,
left that open.
He's not married yet, gals.
He's still a free bachelor.
He is, and I'm 100% not.
Yes, that's right. You're off the market. So that was the beginning little intro that they gave there. So we got sort of like the Emperor likes Duke Leto and wanted Duke Leto to be part of his house at one point, but things didn't work out that way, apparently. Um, so we jump now into the main story, and we get introduced to Dr. Kynes. As we said, Dr. Kynes is the planetologist. He kind of studies the ecology of Arrakis, but he's also the judge of change for the Emperor. And he's the guy who's supposed to decide, not decide, but just make sure everything's going, transitioning correctly between the houses when they take over the fiefdom of Arrakis. So, but we find out that he's a little different. He's not. How should we put it, Dave? He's not. Even though he's in the Emperor's service, he's been with Fremen for a very long time.
He basically is a Fremen. I mean, kind of the way he acts later in the chapter kind of proves the point. Because he's like, "How'd you know the Fremen?" You know.
Right. Exactly. So
how'd you know they're Fremen, man?
Hey, how you know them?
How you know them? You run with them?
So,
you been to Arrakis before?
I haven't seen you in this neighborhood before.
Oh yeah.
So, so Dr. Kynes arrives at the hangar bay for the Atreides, and he seems a little like put out that he's got to even deal with the Duke, and just getting him like just having him giving him a lay of the land. Like he's sort of just like I can't even be bothered with these people.
Which I mean, I get to a certain extent, but it seems like the Harkonnens have been way more strict like that.
Yeah, I mean, weren't the Harkonnens just complete assholes? And like, wasn't he at a point like just like, God, I don't even want to deal with anybody?
Well, yeah, it's just so weird. It seems like everyone else, it seems it gets way more lax under the Atreides, and he's just like, oh, I have to call this guy Lord. Like, didn't you have to like lick Harkonnen's toes or something like that every time he was in there? Like, I mean, I just don't. It just seems like it's a step up from what you were working with.
Right, exactly. Well, maybe he just hasn't met them. This is obviously the first time he meets them. Gurney has to coach Dr. Kynes. Gurney tells Dr. Kynes, "You may call the Duke my lord, sire, nobleborn. Also is also correct, but usually reserved to more formal occasions. The son may be addressed as young master or my lord. The Duke is a man of much leniency, but brooks a little familiarity. So." Basically, it's just like you still have to give him a little respect when you talk to him. But then Dr. Kynes thinks when he's being coached by Gurney, he says, they'll learn soon enough who's the master on Arrakis. Order me questions half the night by that mentat. Will they expect me to guide them on an inspection of this spicing mine? Do they? So he's like indignant that he just has to show up.
I guess. It's bizarre. Like I figured things would be worse to the Harkonnens. He just seems annoyed at everything.
And then he kind of even goes on and says, "I'll have Stilgar send Duncan Idaho's head to the Duke."
Oh yeah, he's kind of plotting in his head.
Yeah. So they make their first introductions. The Dr. Kynes meets the Duke, and the Kynes is there with a bunch of Fremen behind him. When he enters this hangar bay, he's dressed in his still suit, but he also has like his veil and his desert cloak with him. And he obviously has the blue within blue eyes as well.
I also enjoy getting high on spice.
I'm Dr. Kynes.
Hey, I'm Dr.
Kynes.
Hey.
I'm Dr. Kynes. Hey, I like desert sand. I like worms. I like learning about moisture evaporation, and I love to do a line of spice. You guys got some spice?
Off a hooker's ass. You know.
So he meets the Dr. Kynes meets the Duke, meets Paul, And then Gurney's there as well, but obviously, as we've said before, that he had talked to Gurney, and he must have talked to Thufir as well, as he was questioned by Thufir. So they start doing a little introduction, a little back and forth, saying who they were, and they notice that he's got the Fremen escort that's with him, and then he comes in to meet them, and he goes on to show them that he gifted the Duke and Paul stillsuits that are Fremen made. These are like this is what you want when you go out in the desert.
You don't want the Walmart stillsuits.
No, it's not good. It's gonna give you a little leakage issues. So he goes in and he starts showing the Duke how the suit works. So we get the whole thing about the suit, how it.
Dr. Kynes, could you give me an explanation of the workings?
Yep.
Okay.
Is that the Duke?
Yes.
I love it. Yeah, he says so. The Duke says, "We're in your hands," and so he goes in and he says, he goes to the suit and he says, "It's basically a micro sandwich. It's got a little pastrami, it's got some salami, really spicy. You got a little olive oil on there. It's really good, really good."
And the most important part is it processes your shit and piss into thigh pads.
Yes, thigh pads. It is urine and feces are processed through the thigh pads. Can't get that in any regular hoagie bun. Yeah, take that back to Jersey. Smoke that spice.
Poopy spice.
So he goes. So he goes through and he tells them how it works, and basically he says, "You're only going to lose in deep desert. You're probably only going to lose like a thimble worth of water." And then he says,
the water you spit out on the table,
Yeah, that was the thimbleful. So he sets up the Duke correctly, and then he goes to Paul, and he says, Doctor sees how Paul's wearing. He says, "You've worn a still suit before," and Paul says, "No, this is the first time." "Then somebody adjusted for you?" "No,
no, I didn't do nothing."
"Your desert boots are fitted slip fashion at the ankles. Who told you to do that?"
"My concubine."
"It seemed the right way," he says. "That most certainly is." And then he thinks to himself that there was a prophecy about their Messiah, saying that he shall know the ways as though he was born to them. And then the Duke's like, "Come on, we're wasting time." So Paul put it on right, and I'm a dummy. So he gets into their not copter. I was going to say helicopter, Othopter, and this is the first time we've been in one of these, I believe. I don't think we've been in one so far. So they're basically like giant dragonflies.
Yeah,
robotic
dragonflies.
Yeah, and he takes off, and as they're going, they're flying through, and they have escorts too with them. Like the Duke has guards flying along with them just in case they're attacked. So, and security's tight, of course, too, and of who's around them. But they're going to go watch. They're going to go watch a sand mining operation out in the desert. So that's what they're going to do.
They're going to go watch a big worm swallow up a sanding operation.
So while they're flying, there's a lot of questions thrown at Dr. Kynes. One is about these, as we recall, last week we were talking about the Duke talking to Thufir about getting access to those, what do you want to call them, ecological stations that the Emperor owns. And he's trying to press them like, we could use those. And he's like, those are the Emperor's. Yeah, but we could use them. Yeah, but those are the Emperor's.
But does the Emperor actually use them right,
Yeah.
Does the Emperor, actually use them okay?
Okay. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so he's trying to push for that. And then he goes into... I mean, Dr. Kynes starts talking more about the ecology of the planet. Paul has a lot of questions about like how plants grow, and they see at one point a bird that the Duke sees,
How do
and
worms have babies?
how do worms have babies?
Well, you see, when a worm loves another worm, they have gay sex because they're worms, you know?
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, it's the only way they can do it. They're worms, right?
That's how they do it. They get a little worm action.
Yeah.
So as they're flying as well, Gurney picks up his I keep wanting to say sitar, but it's not a sitar. It's his I forgot the
flute.
Name. Not flute, but he starts singing. He starts singing about the desert, and basically he's talking about the Israelites being in the desert and eating manna. So,
oh, he likes his new Orange Catholic as the new Black Bible.
Yes, he does. So he's so they're flying along, and Gurney's singing songs to them, and as they're going, like I said, they do see this bird, and Paul's kind of shocked that their birds of that size are alive on the planet. So it's it's interesting to him. But
Welcome
then they start
to Jurassic Park.
Yes, I know. And then they start talking a lot about the worms, and they talk about Dr. Kynes goes into ways that you could survive if a worm was to attack, and how you would try to keep away from a worm, and different types of sand that you want to keep away from, which we'll see a little later that he uses some of this information to escape from a worm attack. So, Dr. Kynes kind of gives like a kind of a 101 on worms, and how they all live in the desert and how they hunt, and then there was another strange thing. They talk about how the worms, if you cut them into different pieces, they says, Paul asks how the worm's taken, and Dr. Kynes says, high voltage, electrical shock applied separately to each ring of segment is the only known way of killing and preserve an entire worm.
You went into Christopher Walken a little bit. That was great.
They can be stunned and shattered by explosives, but each ring segment has a life of its own. Barring atomics, I know no explosive powerful enough to destroy a large worm entirely. They're incredibly tough. So, like, you could just like cut a worm in half, and the other half will still keep living. So the segments are like different.
They're kind of like starfish, right?
Sort of like human centipede kind of thing.
Ooh, that's kind of sexy.
No, it's not. Did you ever see Human Centipede?
No.
Where they sew the mouths to the ass?
Yes, but I saw the South Park version of it. It's Human Centipede.
Oh, okay.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah, so, and then he gives them the whole things about how to keep off drum sand or a tidal dust basin and stuff like that. How they can reverberate sound while you're walking across them and attract the worms. Also, obviously, shield generators will make worms go completely insane and go after you. So
they go bonkers. They just love it.
And and they get to the point where they get to the spice sand production. There's a big cloud of sand, and there's this big sand crawler. It looks like a giant beetle, they say, and it's got a plume of sand coming out. So they're using this centrifuge to pull the sand out, and they siphon out the spice. During this, the Duke sees a worm sign, and it's a big one that's coming through, and they start sending the
Dr. Kynes, is that the worm sign over there?
Worm, big one. So he calls in to the crawler, and they say, hey, that's a worm sign, and then they say who found that worm, because there's a bonus if you see a big worm sign, you get a bonus. And Gurney says, hey, why don't you just tell them they can split the worm sign all among them, and it's the Duke that found it. So
No, Duke's taking all the money. He needs to pay for new crawlers because the Harkonnens, they
Yeah,
uh they
I'm a little
left him
hard
all
up on
broke.
cash, Kynes. I could use that.
Yeah,
Use
I
that
can use
stuff.
that dough. Yeah, Dr. Kynes, I can use that dough, okay?
I need some money. Um,
I'm kind of poor, you know. I just moved here. They didn't pay for my move.
it's all on credit cards. Um, so yeah, so when they do the do the whole they tell the crawler, but then they have to have these this carryall is supposed to come and pick up the sand mining operation and pick it off the ground and fly away before the worm comes. But the carryall is nowhere in sight, and they wait and wait, and then this thing is like 20 minutes away. The worm is going to approach in about 20-25 minutes, and it's not showing up. So the Duke makes the decision that he's going to pick up the crew along with his escorts and the other spotters that are flying around. They're looking for a worm sign. So they all land, and the spice miners are like, "We can't leave all this spice here." And he's like, "Fuck the spice. You know, your lives are more important."
Arrakis lives matter.
Yeah, that's right. So after some coaxing, what did he say that he was going to do if they don't pick him up?
Didn't he say he'd like beat them if they didn't like?
Yeah, something. There's something about it. Yeah, I can't remember exactly. He was kind of aggravated because they didn't want to come out, and finally they all came out, and so they all jump on the orthopters and they take off.
A
And
orthopter.
and then they watch this giant worm come up and just consume the crawler completely and destroy it. And Duke's pretty pissed off because he just lost another sand processing sand crawler. So he's pretty pissed off about that.
I keep losing all my stuff. Okay.
You guys are really fucking things up here.
You guys are a real downer. Can we get rid of the worms?
So as they're flying back, he noticed that. So Paul's sitting in the back with the he's sitting in the back with the spice miners. And one of the things they did is they threw the shield generators off the other orthopters because they're useless anyways.
And they got to make room for the people.
Yes, and for weight, so they do that. But Paul sees that there's two men that are still out there after the worm takes the sand crawler and crushes it. And Paul sort of just like there's two guys out there still. And he's like, oh, they came with us. They just wanted to see how they made sand or how they make spice.
Are they Fremen?
Is it Fremen? And he's like, no. There's just like, we'll send a ship back. He says, they'll probably be dead before you get them back there. And he's like, well, we'll send one anyways, just in case. And then Paul, through his Bene Gesserit training, kind of knows that they're lying, that those are Fremen down there. So he's not telling the truth about that.
And Dr. Kynes all thinking, man, this Duke, you know, he kind of likes people instead of hates on people, huh?
He's a pretty nice guy. He's a stand-up dude.
Maybe I'll send him Gertie's head in a nice flower box.
What's in the box? What's in the box?
Instead of just a plain box, you know?
Right. So, yeah. And there's one other thing that shows up that as they're sitting, the spice miner sitting back with Paul, one of the whispers, Leet, and is looking at Kynes, and Kynes turns around and looks at him. So this means that probably Dr. Kynes is Leet, this person that's in high regard in the Fremen.
Ooh. Mr. Kynes, oh yeah?
Kynes. And like as you said, he thinks that he likes the Duke. Kynes is kind of like softening up to the Duke. So he's like, you know, he thinks to himself, this Duke is concerned more over the men than he was over the spice. He risked his own life and that of his son to save the men. He passed off a loss of spice crawler with a gesture. The threat to the men's lives to him, the threat to the men's lives had him in a rage. This leader, this leader such a leader such as this would command fantastic loyalty.
But you know, he's still really pissing me off by asking about the Emperor's stuff all the time.
Stop asking me about my job. I don't ask you what you do. Anyways, and that's how the chapter ends. So, thoughts on Dr. Kynes? Thought about worm signs and
Dr. Kynes does a nice 180 throughout the episode, throughout the chapter. He's all like, I hate these people. And he's like, maybe I don't hate them as much as I thought I did.
hey, these guys ain't assholes.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. He's good. He's interesting. I'm interested to see more Dr. Kynes in the book. I don't remember much about him doing anything in the movie after like the beginning.
Yeah, he's kind of stopped showing up. Mm-hmm.
Poor Dr. Kynes. And I think the role is expanded, or they're having more of it in the movie that's coming out later this year. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that works out.
Yeah,
Dr. Kynes.
Dr. Kynes, he's going to be played by. He's not going to be a man actually for this. Let me just find it here.
He's being played by a Bene Gesserit.
Yeah, he's it's going to be played by a woman, a black woman. Swap with Sharon Duncan Brewster from Rogue One. I don't remember her from Rogue One. That's the only problem.
I'm sure she was probably a bit character because I don't remember her either. Because I mostly just remember what's her face, Jen Erso.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't remember what part she played in Rogue One.
And then there was the Mon Mothma. I don't remember any other women having big parts in Rogue One. So I'm sure she was like a background player. She was
Senator Pamela. Right,
I'm sure she was just at one of the meetings and had like one or two lines.
You get those plans.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I'm seeing a picture of her for Rogue One in her, but I definitely do not remember her whatsoever. She probably had like 3 lines. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was at one of the council meetings, I'm sure.
She's in a lot of parts. She's in a Doctor Who episode, and she's in a lot of TV and stuff like that. So nice. I'm looking at her IMDb. So she's going to be Dr. Leto Kynes. You know, I don't really see that being a big deal. I mean, I heard some people freaking out that it's a woman. I'm like, does it really matter if Dr. Kynes is a man or woman? It's kind of a smaller role, anyways.
I mean, who knows? I don't know. I guess we'll see how it turns out. I heard they're expanding Lady Jessica's role a lot in the film.
Are they?
I don't know if they're expanding Dr. Kynes' role or not.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll have to see how they put this together. But yeah, so Dr. Kynes, so potentially is Leet. So that's kind of cool. You know, we didn't know who Leet was before, obviously, and then also, you know, Paul is kind of sizing people up.
Paul's always doing that.
Yeah. So, and the other thing we forgot to bring up is that we won't know this yet, but Dr. Kynes is father to Chani, which is Paul's girlfriend later on.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, but yeah.
So is Dr. Kynes her mother in the new movie?
I guess, yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, so it's interesting, and you know, he's obviously been on the planet long enough to he knows how a lot of the ecology works. So that's what he studies. He says he studies like soil core, sample cores, and obviously all plant life, and obviously the worms and the spice. So it's got to be actually, I would imagine that's a huge undertaking to learn everything about a planet.
Yeah, and Paul was asking about what's the relationship between the worms and the spice, and they said there is one. They just don't know like what. I mean, he just was being coy on it because I guess the Harkonnens totally did not want to know or didn't want the information to come out about
right,
about what the link was, if there is a link.
Right. And on top of that, he was kind of aggravated that Paul, at being like 15 years old, is asking all these adult questions. So.
Your britches are too big for you, Paul. You gotta stop this shit.
Yeah, so anyways, but we're going to do the one chapter because it was a kind of a long chapter. Hope you're reading along with us and enjoying our recap of these. Let us know if you like Dr. Leah Kynes talking like a New Yorker Jersey person.
Christopher Walken type.
Just I'll have to work on my Walken impression.
Oh, you slipped into it for a second. I just see Christopher Walken in my head. It's great.
Because he does have a little bit of a Jersey kind of accent. I don't know where's Christopher Walken from.
I don't know. The Christopher Walken accent is its own.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I'm just curious where he actually is. Where he was born.
Well, they were considering him for Han Solo in the original Star Wars trilogy, right?
Get out, that'd be hilarious.
I want to live in that alternate universe where Christopher Walken was. Christopher Walken was Han Solo. I was like, oh, Chewie, you're a big nerf herder or something.
He was born in Astoria, New York.
Oh, nice.
So right outside Queens. Right outside Queens. So.
Outside of Queens. Well, that explains it, I guess.
Yes, it does. Yes. Yeah. So, anyways, I'm enjoying it, and I think next chapter we get the what's it called, the big dining scene where they at the banquet hall, the banquet for all the important people.
All the important people and the smuggler.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. The smuggler's in there too. So we'll get in that for next week. So very cool. Any other thoughts before we wrap this one up?
No, not really. It's a good chapter. I like getting to meet Dr. Kynes and seeing all the stuff come together, and finally getting to see a worm. They've been talking about worms for a while, and it's Dune. Everyone knows there's worms on Dune, so finally getting to it's kind of nice.
We've been talking about worms forever, and finally see our first worm. So.
It's a big one too.
It's a big worm.
That's what she said.
All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. Tune in next week. We'll be back in our regular time schedule for Dune. And until then, just remember, the spice must flow.
Absolutely. Get the spice.
Get the spice. Come on. You put the spice with the meatballs.
It puts the spice on its skin, or else it gets the lotion again.
Or you could just give them pasta. Sometimes they like that.
It gets the sauce.
All right, bye.
Well, McCoy, my boy, come mix me a drink. Before the night's over, I'll puke in the sink, and we'll cry till we laugh, and we'll both shit our pants. You're the best drinking friend I ever